All right, we are live for another Terran Tuesday. And on the back end, we were talking technology, although we have a magnificent subject for the day. We actually have a fun little story that Black Knight's going to share with us. That was so fun. We decided to save it for the stream. It'll be our minor opening topic. Black Knight, what did you want to share with us?
Ah, well, it's about refrigerators. And
Oh,
Yay.
we're talking dystopian refrigerators.
ooh, this sounds like a April Fool's prank almost.
Well, sadly, it is not. I'm not like this is it's a story that one of my readers told me
Oh, yeah?
about her brand new 2024 model giant luxurious refrigerator, which
Probably
has,
expensive.
yeah, it's insanely expensive. But because they have a large family, um, and they they assumed, they naively assumed, that it would be just like an ordinary refrigerator, but advanced, like digital, uh, um, and with all kinds of apps and stuff. The refrigerator itself has two apps. Two,
What?
yep, two apps that you can use with your phone.
Really? What
And
do you do with the
yes,
app on?
yes, and
Oh,
the refrigerator is also always connected to your wireless.
oh,
If you
nice.
do not have wireless, the refrigerator bugs, like, um, in some cases the refrigerator auto locks itself if you do not
No,
have it.
no,
Yes, yes.
no, no. That can't
And the refrigerator has cameras,
be. Ew.
and the refrigerator measures everything that you put inside, and you take out of it.
Oh my.
And it scans your face, and it has like facial recognition, so it would know who in your household took that big slice of fatty ham. And
What?
if said person attempts to open the refrigerator, um, it will not open for him or her.
Oh my gosh. Are you sure? Are you sure this is real?
I'm not joking. The trouble was that she said that if they were, like, they returned the refrigerator, they got rid of it. But she said that if they lived in a specific part of their country,
Uh huh.
uh, the the government there has quotas, imposed quotas, and they could only regulate them via these refrigerators and certain stores, which you can buy things only with digital currency. And there they have like full 100% facial recognition,
Oh my gosh.
and they're connected to these refrigerators, and so they know what you ate. And when you go to the store, to that specific store, and you attempt to buy something which you've already over consumed, you naughty boy, um, well, they will not sell it to you.
I didn't know.
But in
Really?
in yes, yes, but in their case, it was just the fact that the refrigerator had like some problems with the apps, and with the internet. And when they discover that the refrigerator is actually spying on them and is scanning them, etc., and that it could lock itself, potentially depriving them of food, they return it.
Oh my gosh.
So
as
I'm
would
not
I.
I'm not joking. I'm not joking. This is I mean, depending on where they are, they could, like, the company could link the local police department, their digital crime unit, quote unquote digital crime unit, to the refrigerator, and they could listen to and watch what you're doing, and potentially, if you use verboten speech, or verboten words,
Yeah.
you will be arrested. Um, Peace officers will come to your home, and they will drag you away.
Well,
That is just wild.
and
So,
it's very
so
expensive.
if you remember, recently there was a case where a family in Britain, they discussed something about their school on their private chat. Um, I think it was like in Zoom or somewhere, and the cops arrived like a couple of, maybe 2 days later, and they dragged them away for using verboten speech and promoting disturbant ideas and stuff. So,
Wow.
yep, this is what happens when you give your weapons away.
Really? Well, you know what's even better? You don't have to just give your weapons away. You stop buying that stuff, or you buy it and jam it somehow. But in honest, all
Yes.
you have to not buy these smart devices, and you have to learn how to disable your Wi-Fi's. And I know that
Yeah.
Wi-Fi out there anyway. You're going to get picked up at some level going down the road or anything else. That happened to me when I was going down the road. Actually had a toll tag, the toll tag scam show up. And I hadn't been out on that stretch of road in a long time. I went down and immediately received a toll tag scam thing that you have gone past this toll tag booth and
Yeah.
you need to pay this thing. But the thing that made me realize is that they can be laid out anywhere. And you can't, so you are going to run into Wi-Fi. You're going to run into those things. Try to have as few devices on you as possible, and just refuse to update whenever you can. I have a TV from 2012 in my house, and it's going to stay that way. I don't need tracking technology watching me. I don't need anything else. I don't have anything that I really desire to watch that I can't see on my iPad or my computer or my iPhone. And so there's no reason for me to update. And when it comes down to it, yes, people can see things, but let's make it as hard for them as possible. And so I don't, if you can, don't get the update on your smart meter, because that's the next step. When they can come in and say, "Well, you've used up your electric uh, ration for the month," and just shut it off. They already
Well, they'll remotely shut it off.
Oh, yeah, they can absolutely. So the more you refuse to do it, eventually they get the message that maybe that this market doesn't support itself. Of course, if the government itself is underwriting it, then there's not a lot you can do. But just always make sure to, whenever possible, to eschew those things that are smart for you. You're smart enough to do it yourself, and there is no reason for your toilet to talk to your internet.
Yes, unless
Right.
you're an NPC, and this
Really.
is, yeah, this is
But
you're clapping, you're happily clapping like a clapping seal jacked on Soylent Green or something, and it's like, yay,
well,
the government will
speaking
protect me.
speaking of surveillance, I think it's time to go ahead and get into our topic, which is where all y'all gonna expose to the rest of the world how your writing journeys have been going so far. Because both of you have had multiple books published. You've have your fan bases are cultivating and growing, and I think it'd be excellent to explore what that's been like when you first decided to pick up the pen, pick up the art of prose literature, and just start pouring out your heart onto the pages, pouring out those beautiful adventures for people to consume and read and get lost in, and how it's been up till now and what you expect for tomorrow. And R.H. Snow, you always got the best opener, so I'd really love
Really?
to hear yours in this one. Yes, you're going to start our journey down this Yellow Brick Road today.
Well, we're going to start off by, first of all, by reaching out, because I know there are people out there that are listening, and I know that there are a lot of you out there. I've seen it over and over again lately. People are so discouraged. They're so upset and angry, and you have a reason to be. I have so many writers and authors that are out there right now that are struggling, not because they aren't able to write. They're able to write. They're able to have a vision for their books, but they're dealing with a lot of depression and drama, and that's why I have my header for mine is drama, despair, and devotion. Because we have a tendency to go through these cycles as writers. Writers are very passionate people. We are very much in touch with either the vision in our head or the feelings in our heart, or both. And anything that messes with that vibe can enormously affect us. And especially when we're trying to deal with social media amplifies those feelings. It's very easy for us to compare ourselves to other writers, to compare ourselves to other people, to be exposed to someone else who is angry or out of step that day, that just is looking for a fight, to be tracked or travailed by somebody else who thinks that we are supposed to be there to do their bidding, or just to feed their hatred. We've had a lot of people that are consumed by hate right now, and it's very sad, because I don't think I've ever seen the levels of hatred at this point in my life. And I'm 62 years old, and I've lived through a lot. And I've certainly lived back in some days when there certainly was hate out there, especially institutionally. And I haven't ever seen people like this. And so it has a tendency to affect us all. And when you're a writer and you're looking for that love or that encouragement, and instead what you're receiving is just negative feedback, not only on your book, but on something you might have said on the internet, or some place where you were just happy to share something. You sold a book, and somebody else will come in and say, "Oh, you're not making anything," or that you finally sold 300. Maybe you finally got that number, and somebody else comes in and accuses you of being, lording it over someone. It is a very difficult environment right now to be joyful and to be in love with a story. And what I want to get back to is how are we doing as writers, as us, when the first time we picked up the pen or put our hands to the keyboard or started thumbing in the story, as I did when I first started writing Watcher the Damned, actually on an iPhone and an iPad. I didn't even have a keyboard at that point. Where were we when we started? And where are we now? And the whole goal of this is to never surrender your ability to write. I don't want somebody coming away from this thinking that this is another rah-rah session where we talk about how awesome our lives are and how much better we are than somebody else. This is about dealing with the real struggle of emotion as we put our lives into a story and then put it out there for the world to either love or jeer. And it can be tough either way. It can be tough. And it can also be extraordinary. It can be the most rewarding experience outside of your family that you will ever have. And so I wanted to make sure that we go deep into that cesspit of emotion that a lot of people are dealing with, especially on X in the writing community. We're going to go there talking about the drama, the fact that people have a tendency to stir up problems just to see other people fail. And we don't want that. We want you to succeed. We want anybody that's listening to this to feel like they've been uplifted today, and that we know what it means to be out there and to be struggling. So just first of all, start off with that prayer that you hear this, that if you don't hear it right now, if you're live and you're listening to this and you're having a tough time, we love you, and we're not going to let you go at it alone. And that's why we're here today. So I'm going to kick it on over to you guys for just a minute, and we're going to see where this goes.
Indeed. Yeah, that's a big one. You definitely see a lot of that today. One of them I definitely hear a lot from, which this despair, if you will, is usually around because the new controversy of AI of scraping everyone's books.
Yeah.
And I've always thought of it very interesting because uh how do I put this? It's like, to me, your reaction to something says a lot solely about the individual. And I've noticed that maybe a lot of the individuals today are walking around with a lot of that despair. So when something like this comes along, sweeps them off their feet, they take it really personal, and it just drives another nail in despair in them. And I say that because when AI came around and people are like, oh, AI books and all that, to me, I think of the fantasies that encouraged my writing
Mhm.
more than anything, because I never had any physical encouragement there. I never had a person saying, hey, you can do this. It was always just me realizing that I don't suck at particular things, or just not being afraid to fail, if you would, to just charge in and try these new things. And that was kind of how my early writing experiences were. But one thing that I carried with me was that a lot of this came from those things that inspired me, which were usually legends of old. And one that really just kind of hit me across the face that I'm seeing like this huge lack of is the sort of legend of old that I see unfolding today when Artist Against Machine is really the legend of John Henry and John Henry's hammer. If anybody knows that one, which I've actually held
Yeah.
on to, is
Yes.
very, very almost inspirational, even though he basically dies at the end. But it's a man going against the machine, doing what he can do with his bare hands, and what a machine's supposed to be doing better than him. But nonetheless, he goes in and he gives it his all. And I've always seen that as, look, you have this machine. This machine may, people are proclaiming it to be better. Maybe it's more efficient. I wouldn't necessarily drop the word better, but definitely efficient. But that's just a challenge, a magnificent challenge, but a challenge that I believe every writer that continues to write in the face of takes on, and they're facing their own little John Henry's hammer moment. And unfortunately, I see a lot of writers just don't, I guess, for a um, lack of better words, don't have that John Henry spirit, if you get my drift.
Well, and go ahead. I want Black Knight to go first, but I agree with you on this. John Henry, the whole story is about a man doing it. He was the best man at it. He put himself against the machine, and yes, he paid the price. But what people forget is that we celebrate John Henry, not the machine. That's it. John
Yeah.
is remembered.
Well, I do agree, and to a certain extent that you have to not fully swim in the social media waters,
Mhm.
because then, like most of us authors, we kind of we're somewhat akin to energy sponges, and in many cases we kind of soak a bit too much of the negative, and cannot balance it with the positive, and that affects us more than others who are just procrastinating and browsing the social media. But yep, and as for my own journey, which is not that important, but
Yes, it is.
I probably heard it before, that I may have mentioned it, but I did start with old bits of cardboard, um, where I would scribble with an old pencil or a pen some ideas and things. even lines of dialogue. While I was working at one of my 3 jobs back then, it was in an underground storage unit, and yeah, that I would do that as soon as I've had an idea and I thought of something. I would write it down. I would tear a piece of cardboard from one of the boxes and I would write it down. And sometimes when I left, and when my shift was over, I would come home with like a small bag, small shopping bag full of cardboard pieces, and I would write everything down on my computer. And sometimes I would stay like 2, 3, or 4 o'clock, and early morning I would go working again. So yeah, that was perhaps one of my beginnings.
Here's a question for you both. Was it difficult to start writing?
You want to go first, right?
Okay, so yeah, it was the difficulty was not to start writing per se, but to write specific things, especially in my case, things which were of negative nature. But I had to. Because even though back then everything was pretty much like 80% negative, I had to write these things, and I wrote them. But not forcing myself to write them. It's just that I managed to balance this with enough positive, so I was able to write them. But it was difficult. It was quite difficult.
Roger. What about you, Eric Snow?
Starting writing for me, my writing process has been intuitive almost since I was a little kid. I started writing poetry back when I was 6 years old, 7 years old. I fact, I still have some of it, but it was always snippets and short things. I gradually got to where I was doing some investigative journalism that I did independently, and then had some papers pick up things like that. I would write. I very rarely ever wrote a story. I wrote just mostly poetry and journalistic things, and comments that as that would come up in the early days of the internet. So I would have commentary, things like that. The idea of writing fiction never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that I would actually go out and write I read all the time. I mean, I loved reading. And so it just didn't occur to me. It was something I had never imagined myself doing, is writing a novel. And so to write the story for Watcher of the Damned, to have that vision come to me, and knowing the first part of it and the last part of it. I've said this often, seeing the first scene, the last scene, and key points in the middle, like an island of chains. I've seen a chain of islands stretching towards the horizon, and I can see that last peak, but there's no way to get there. I had to decide I was going to write it in episodes. And so my writing becomes episodic. I will usually write a full, it's not really a scene. I don't write scenes and just untie them together. I write an episode, and it will have a little arc inside of the story where these things are going on. And then I find that as I write these chunks, that sometimes I have to break them up and shift them around to make sure that the other storylines are in there, especially as we've gotten further in the writing process, where we now have the factions showing up and I have this big cast of characters. And so it would have been daunting if I'd started out that first incredible day when I just had this vision and just sat down and wrote the first. I wrote the opening chapter almost wholesale. It is almost exactly like it came out. That first chapter in Watch of the Damned is almost completely unedited. It's left there for all eternity like I wrote it the first day. If I'd thought I had to write a whole book, I probably would have stopped. So instead, I just concentrated on what happens next. What happens next in the story? I knew what the ending was going to be. And I kind of saw the arc, and I ended up writing the arc as a way of as an exercise to get me from point A to point B, like a map. But if I thought I was going to write the whole thing as a novels, especially 9 books, or what we're looking at now, probably about 12 books. So there's at least 3 more to go. I would have quit probably because I would have been discouraged. And so writing the stories of just what happens next, wanting to find out what happens next in the story, and allowing that free flow moment to happen where I allow my characters to talk the way they want to, and I allow things to happen that maybe I don't know if they should fit in the story or not. I can go back then and look at it and take it apart or fit it in as I need to. It becomes an adventure for me instead of a job that I have to do, instead of something I have to finish. I would say that starting point for me, that was the most critical decision I made, was not to go, I have to sit down and write a book. It was, I want to find out what happens next. And when I made it something of joy for me, it was easy. I just wanted to hear my characters talk, and they talked inside my head, and I just wrote down. I've often said that the process of writing Watch of the Damned was allowing the characters to ride along and just asking them to let me tag along behind them as an observer. Not inserting myself in the story, not letting myself be seen, but they're letting me come along with them on this adventure. And if some of the material doesn't get used for the book because it's just too obscure, then that's fine. It goes in my notes. But I'm having this fantastic time writing along with these characters that I love, that have been born out of my soul, and I get a chance to meet new people every time I go in to write. And so that's the joy of it. That's what made the difference for me, was deciding this was going to be a what next scenario instead of a, I have to accomplish this.
That actually reminds me a lot of Robert E. Howard. I believe he said once that when he was writing Conan, he imagined Conan in all his bravado and magnificence standing beside him, looking down at him as he penned his work, like almost trying to channel that Conan energy. That's what that kind of reminds me of. But both of you have very unique and vast and interesting, and at this point also fleshed out universes that you've both been writing in for quite some time. What made you get enthralled or interested in this particular spark, this idea that flourished into your universes? What was the thing that made you want to write in this? And where it is now, is it kind of where you imagined it being? Why don't we start off with you, Black Knight?
I'm trying really hard to not repeat anything that I've already said earlier in some of the earlier streams.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of streams. I'm sure, like, not everybody's seen them on, so feel free
I
to
know.
repeat yourself a little bit.
I'm just trying to think. Would you like to know about, like, perhaps a favorite aspect of the universe?
Sure.
Something which it's also your favorite, or something that is my favorite?
Well, let's go to your favorite, because this is like, an exploration of you. What exactly about your universe sticks out as your favorite?
Yes, but we are servants of the reader, so okay, all right. I would say that one of the most wholesome, it's equal parts wholesome and equal parts terrifying, was the uplift of the sentient species, and turning them into sentient races, which for the for humanity of the Star Shattered universe, they're not looking for conveniently capable in certain area workforce, like slave work, almost like slave work force, like serfs, or looking to create, let's say, hardy but disposable soldiers. No, they in the very beginning they would not, they could not assume that the galaxy was so full of other species, and they were more like of in this wrongish mindset that yeah, there were like a few races, but like that's it. Or and maybe they knew of some of the older ones who are like too far ahead, and they considered everyone behind them like ants almost. They don't care about them. They will not even talk to you. They will not interact with you. And so they kind of like, with a bit too much enthusiasm, they kind of went that journey of uplift, and they happily made new friends. They weren't aiming for anything else. They just like, yeah, well, you are creatures of our planet, and this is your planet too, and we can give you sentience, so we'll do it. We'll do it. And they were successful. They were, I would say, widely successful, even though it wasn't easy. But then came the horror part of it, the terror, which was the fact that they discovered that what they did out of love for life and companionship, it was actually a heretical act, according to the elder core galaxy races, and thus that act added another layer of barbarism, in quotation marks, which has been widely, the humanity has been widely like condemned for that, and the uplifted species, when they beat them, our uplifted species, when they meet them, they are called like defectives and genetic refuse, trash flesh, etc., etc. So because humanity created them, and mind you, they were at least successful. Humanity was at least successful in deceiving the elder races that the creatures we have uplifted are our slaves, and so they have to live with this lie and pretend that the creatures we have uplifted in freedom and given, like, embraced them as friends, and helpers, that they're actually our slaves, which is repugnant to modern humans. It's like deeply repugnant. They actually, in the history of the alternate history of Earth in Star Shattered, they had defeated. They have ruined like mass slavery in almost in antiquity. Rome was destroyed. Like the early Roman Empire was crushed because of that. And it's something which most, if not Terrans, they when they have to protect them. In order to protect them, they have to lie that yes, they are my servants, while they're actually not their servants. They're their friends. This is like it's something which the duality of it is perhaps one of the aspects of the world building that I love the most.
Yes, definitely echoes of some of the stuff you mentioned in the past. But R.H. Snow, do you remember the question?
You go ahead and hit me again here.
Basically,
I got fascinated with him talking about world buildings.
What is the inspiration of your world and where it is now? Like, did you see that coming? How it's developed over time? How's the development of your world kind of happened? And what do you think of your world overall that you've been writing in?
Okay, so the development of my world happened actually with that first vision of the first chapter. So as I write the scene down, I've got this opening sequence of a man chained at a gate, and he is staring into this empty pavilion, and it's not a. I mean, it's a cavernous giant place, and it's empty of humans, but it is surrounded by. He's surrounded instead by these mutated creatures that used to be human. They are not necessarily like have a foot or an arm extra or something like that. Instead, they have these horrible skin conditions, and I realize these are diseased people. They're people who've been affected by something. And then I start to look around the scene because I can actually see it in my head. I'm really blessed with the ability to see very vividly things that are in my mind. And dreams are all like technicolor wonders for me. I can read in my dreams. I can sing. I see colors that are not usually visible clearly in the real world. And so that part of my brain just is on overdrive constantly. I actually can smell like the things I'm holding in my hand when I have a dream. My imagination is the same way. And so as this scene unfolds before me, because I don't think of it ahead of time, I just start writing it. And I'm in this dusty, cavernous pavilion. There's no humans around, but there's these mutated creatures. And I realize that they're human as I start to look at them more closely. And they have these terrible skin conditions. They're hairless. They seem to be dressed in old clothes that have been repurposed. That they're still trying to look beautiful or handsome for each other. They're still trying to interact. And the man at the gate is staring at them with this half resentment, half longing, as he watches this event unfold from his post where he is imprisoned, as these what are left of men and women interact with each other on the dance pavilion at the reunion camp. And as this scene unfolds, I look around and I can see the conditions of the buildings and how they are falling apart, that they've been put back. There's a certain look to buildings when they are brand new. You can tell they're shiny and the bolts don't have any rust around them and the wood looks a certain way. And then there's buildings who have been carefully preserved through maintenance over time, and they will have a certain look to them as well. The doorposts may be polished, where hands have moved through, but it's still kept clean. You'll see grass in the yard perhaps, but it's been trimmed neatly in certain places and allowed to grow up in others. Then there are places that have been abandoned, and they have this feel to them where there are things falling down. There's a jumble there. There's a certain fear associated with buildings that are abandoned because they look lonely and uninhabited. There's a ghost inside that you can't see. You can feel it there. Then there are buildings that have been abandoned and then repurposed. These are very unusual. You'll see them a lot in war zones, or you'll see them in towns that have been taken back over by other people. and things have been put back up, or certain things have been built and other things are left lying where they were before. And the world itself is beautiful. There are flowers, and it's fall, and so there's the fall colors, and I realized it was fall. Suddenly I look up and it's October. I wasn't writing this in October. Actually, I first started writing it in spring, but it's October in the story. And I don't know why, it just was. And so as I look at this story and those scenes unfolded toward me, I realized this world had been abandoned and had gone through a terrible tragedy in a not too far past. But the people were coming back from something awful. They were rebuilding. They were trying to create what looked like life to them again. And then as I look around the story, I realize there's no children present. There's not a single small person out there. These are just all adults. Most of them actually may be quite old. We don't know, but actually, and we find out later as I write, I find out that they've actually have had extended lifespans due to the happening, the things that happened to them, that the situation that it created, biologically created them, healed them of certain things, and then gave them inflictions with others, especially inflammatory disease. And so these people have been living in this world that is actually dying. There are no children left. Thanks to the happening, no one is able to procreate. There are no new humans coming. There's just a world that's been decimated by an EMP and the diseased people left behind trying to keep it going. And every time somebody dies in this world, you're not looking forward to a new generation. There's not someone young standing by the graveside crying over grandma or grandpa. It's the rest of your friends that are left, the last ones. And so it came as a shock when I wrote this, that the first words out of it was when he saw the child. The child was so extraordinary to him. The idea that a child would exist was so extraordinary to him that even the apparition, even a ghost of a child, was shocking and horrifying, because he couldn't imagine a world like this terrible, beautiful, brutal world where monsters roam the landscape and haunted buildings and bodies and skeletons everywhere, lying in the forest, having been grown over for 50 years, that a child walks up. Whether it's a figment of his imagination or a ghost, or is she real somewhere else? We don't get to know that. We only know he sees the child. Seeing this world so vividly in my head, to smell the dust, to see the pavilion, because the pavilion is real to me because it actually exists down the road from my house. It's at what is now the Confederate Reunion Grounds, and it's one of the most beautiful dance pavilions to still exist from a time period, I think it's the 1880s when it was built, and it's an open wooden structure. So to see it in that condition, to see it broken down and people still trying to keep it going after all those years with its iron nails, some of them hammered in, like that are actually, I believe, made by hand, to see it still standing after this terrible event, and to see the people inside it trying to go on as if life and romance and sex still happen for people, that things still take place, but there's nobody else out there coming. They're all just the last ones. To know that and to see it, I realized that this whole world exists, and all I had to do was walk outside of that image every time. So as I wrote the story, each step I took me further out. And as I built that world, why was it this way? I saw the scene first and then said, why is it this way? And I had to explore the scene to find out. And knowing the first scene and the last scene of the book from the very beginning, knowing how it was going to end and how it began, to explore the world with the watcher as I wrote this story was, I think, nothing short of miraculous for me, because I loved that experience so much. It was like reading the book, except I was writing it. I was able to write it the way I wanted to, and I just wanted to explore it. So letting my imagination not run wild, but run free, finally, was such an adventure for me. And one of the reasons why is because as a child, I spent an enormous amount of time staring out the window instead of doing my schoolwork. I got in a lot of trouble for it. They told me I had a hyperactive disorder, that I wasn't like the other kids, and that's okay. Yes, I was. I was wiggling. I always went, but I would still stare out the window and daydream when I wasn't supposed to, and I would think of other things. And I had long, elaborate storylines in my head, and I always got in trouble for it. This was the first time this paid off. To be able to allow my imagination to be what it finally was, to be that creator, to be able to be free was extraordinary. And I learned to love it so much that I kept going back. It was never a job because I loved doing it. It was finally where I needed to be, which was to be in the extraordinary landscape of my own mind.
So you're a discovery writer then?
Yes, I guess you could say that. It's I feel really blessed that I was able to know what the ending of the book was from the very beginning. So I know where I'm going in this journey. I was able to see a map, and it's kind of like a treasure map. You don't have all the things on it. You see the X far in the over there in the corner, and I know I'm starting here, and I know I have to get there, and I know there's this island here, and there's this island in the middle, and then there's one close to the end that happens, but I don't know what that landscape looks like. I only have the map in front of me, and I get to go along with the watcher as he explores this world. And it's one of the things I'm very particular about, that as I'm writing this world, that I go on the journey with him, that I don't get ahead of him, that I don't write a scene from the future. Now, sometimes there's been a couple of times that I've looked at the scene and I realize this scene will come later. But I don't plan on writing it that way. I read it and I go, wait, this is actually going to be in the future portion of the book. And I put it aside. But for the most part, everything I'm writing happens in real time. It will happen in in my life as well as in the book. When I'm writing it down, as I'm writing it, it actually goes in that order. So there's only one place, and it's coming up in the next book. And it was actually extraordinary. I wrote it, and I have it in there, and it actually is happening because the book is sort of a day by day travel journal, almost, if you will. That's on a very short timetable. Even though there's 12 books, it happens within a period of just a matter of months, actually. And so as we go through that storyline, I'm sitting there writing all these things down, and I was traveling, and I wrote the scene, and I wrote a particular group, a faction of people actually in Houston, Texas. And I will give that out as a spoiler. Houston becomes this jungle of kudzu and vines and everything. And I was so entranced by this thought as I started writing it and meeting these characters that were in Houston, that were part of this faction that the watcher is going to meet and have to confront. I got to explore Houston. I was so excited. I wrote just a ton of that because I loved seeing the city as it might look 50 years after humans actually stopped living there, with the exception of these few little groups of people. And so seeing the kudzu going up into the skyscrapers and growing from beam to beam, and looking at the forests as they encroach on the land, and then seeing the giant industrial fires that are out on the Houston Bayou, the fact that you're down there on Buffalo Bayou, you have all of these industrial waterfronts, and they're on fire because the happening lit some of them up, and they just never entirely go out. It's part of the burning swamp that comes up in the book, actually, where we have this industrial area. The oil wells and the tanks and everything else are burning eternally because they're tapped in and they just keep burning. And so exploring that was so exciting. I actually got ahead of myself and wrote in some scenes that are now going to be explored in Hellbilly Highway, which is the next book. So they've been sitting there for about 18 months to 2 years. But it was so exciting to write it that I had to write it right then. I just couldn't stop myself. And I didn't. So now I've got it, my book story halfway written because I have it right there. And so I was really excited to have that. And that kind of exploration where I go through with the characters as they're on the journey, being able to follow the map so I know kind of where I'm going, but to be there with them. It is literally, it's like being in that story myself. And if you're hearing that voice, that's the narrator's voice. It is partly my voice, and it's not I try not to self-insert, but as I'm telling you this, I'm telling you through my own voice what this world looks like to me. And so, and of course, there's a secret about the narrator that will be revealed at the end of the book. And it's not going to be like the Dark Tower, so we don't have to worry about that. You're not going to see the author standing there. I just want to get that out of the way right now. But I feel like the ability to express what I see and feel, I need to be able to say it in words that I would use. And so the narrator's voice is close to mine. in most cases. There's a few places where it deviates because it's actually being whispered into another character's ear, but in most cases, the narrator's voice is me because I'm telling you everything I'm seeing in this wonderful world that I get to explore.
Excellent. Yeah, it definitely sounds very rich. But seeing that you're both authors, you both ended up typing up some magnificent pieces of work. What were some of the obstacles that you didn't foresee that arose within the writing process? So I want to start off with you, Black Knight.
Well, one of the major troubles, I should say, was actually mastering good enough writing English so I could convey my thoughts properly, because it's, as you know, English is my third language. I sometimes think in my mother's tongue, and I also, because I learned Russian as a small child. Sometimes it has been hammered into me forcefully, and it's like, or even though it's a beautiful language, that wasn't. We were forced to study it. So sometimes I even think in Russian, and in my state of, let's say, if I cannot pull the proper words and translate them correctly, sometimes I write in a quite different way and unique way than people who write in their own language. But I've been told that this is actually one of the reasons for many of my readers that they like my work. So that was one of the really hard obstacles to overcome. And the second one would be the specific research that I had to complete, different avenues of research, and also because I wanted most of the characters to feel as real as they could be. I saw real people, and I interviewed them. And the problem was that during these interviews, I kind of I was faced with them reliving quite difficult memories, and I had to spend some time, invest some extra effort, put some extra effort into coming to terms with all of this information and their personal stories, which in many cases are quite harrowing. But after it took me like a few years to deal with this, but after I did, and I was able to employ the bulk of what they shared with me, and I was not going to use any names. I told them that I'm not going to dishonor their good faith in me. So in many cases, there are some stories which I have taken bits from their true their actual lives, and I have woven them into this alternate history. I've changed them and refashioned them into what a similar event would be, but from the prism, like from a different point of view. And that was the second most hard thing to overcome for me.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's a lot of cultural boundaries there that you gotta, a lot of cultural obstacles just get over. What specifically made you want to write in English?
Well, that's because first in here there is it's I mean it's no longer there. Well, at least it wasn't no longer like in the last few years, but now it's coming back with the resurgence of the so-called wokeness. But back in the day, you couldn't just like
Yeah,
snap your fingers and say, "Oh yes, I'm going to publish this," and you go to a certain publisher and slap the manuscript on the table, and they clap their hands, and they hug you, and they kiss you, and they say, "Oh, no problem. That's we're just going to publish it because it's awesome, because you have good ideas. Of course, we will edit it. We'll help you." No, just no. There was like maybe 90% of it all was nepotism, because it was, after all, like the good old ex-state publishing houses, and you have to know certain people to get published. Otherwise, and of course, you have to write about certain things to get published. So that was like the major drive behind me improving my English and writing and publishing in English. And the second major thing, I should say, was the fact that the audience here is quite small, quite small. Even though we read lots of books, like this is like you have a few million readers, and the market is overflowed. Is overflowing with too much books, too many books.
All right.
So
very saturated.
It's saturated. So you cannot, unless you are somebody's protege, and you sell your ass to someone. That's it's not going to work. That's like the much greater chance if you go outside, and especially in English, because you have potential audiences in many countries.
Global audience.
Yeah, global. Yeah.
Yes, I definitely imagine I see that. And you've definitely come a long way. You've published multiple books now in English, and they seem to have been getting an audience over time. But all right, Snow, what are some of the difficulties that you've ran into after you started writing?
Well, it's some of the same ones I've had all along, which is, first of all, right off the bat, crippling anxiety about people rejecting my work. I am, okay, so most people don't know this, and I know that y'all, I think I've told y'all before, I'm actually very shy. people don't realize that. I didn't say a word in class for probably the first like 5 years of school. Even though I was considered hyperactive, I would rather stare out the window and daydream about stuff because I got bullied quite a bit. I was the shortest kid. We moved all the time. We moved it probably once a year, once every 18 months at the maximum. So I had to, learn how to survive or die. And the best way to learn to survive was just to not talk at all because I sound like I do. I learned how to imitate accents pretty well. So we moved all over the country. But so I got beat up a couple of times and everything. So I just learned how to be really super quiet. And I was very, very adverse to being out in public. I didn't want people to notice me. And so in order to overcome that, to me, to be who I am, because I'm very outgoing at home, but I was very emotionally anxious out in the world because you can only have to go through a couple of times of getting really beat up to decide you're not going to talk. And so I decided, well, I've got to get over this. So I started taking theater, things like that, and actually came out of my shell. And the number one thing that did it for me is actually realizing God loved me, and I don't have to be afraid of other people, that I'm actually loved as I am for who I am unconditionally. And your parents can say that all you want. They can say, everybody who really loves you and knows you can say that. But until you know that you were created as you're supposed to be, it's really hard to overcome that emotional anxiety that somehow you're not good enough, that people just aren't going to love you. They aren't going to care about you because there really is something wrong with you. The haters will always come after you. And I'm going to say this out loud for whoever it is that's sitting out there listening to this right now. The haters are going to come after you. They're going to come to you because they are looking for someone to hate. You're not actually hateable. You're not actually a bad person. You're not actually doing these things. They are actively looking for someone to destroy. People who hate have a heart filled with destructive weaponry that they are craving to use against any target that doesn't move out of their way. If you get hit, it's because you were there, not because you deserved it. And it is hard to deal with. It's very difficult, especially if it comes along with physical abuse or sexual abuse or any other kind. But when it happens to you as an author, it is attacking that spirit that you put on the paper, and it can be awfully tough. And some of us who are authors have also dealt with those situations in real life, and that's part of our trauma. It's who we are. And it's very tough for us to go out there and say, I'm going to face down the bullies, or I'm going to face down the people that may not like me. And there's some people who don't like you that aren't bullies. They just don't like you because that's who they are. They don't like your work, or they don't like the genre that you write in. It's tough on somebody like me that I want to please everybody, but that's a survival mechanism. If you're not being quiet and staying out of the way, you're going to try to make them love you, so that way they don't get mad and beat you up or tell you to leave or shun you for the entire school year and then leave you behind on a bus. And that did happen to me. So when those things happen, and that crippling anxiety, I was perfectly happy to write. I loved writing. I wrote it for my family. I was terrified of actually publishing it. And so since I was terrified, I knew I had to do it, because I've learned one thing in my life, that the crippling anxiety is a sign that I probably need to go fight that dragon. That's a dragon. The dragons come. Our anxieties and our fears, our despair, our depression, the divorce that's happening that you have to deal with while you're trying to write, or the child that's going through a terrible emotional trauma and you're still having to deal with it while you're writing, when you're losing a parent, or you're losing your job, or you're wondering how you're going to pay the bill, and you're writing. It's how we face the dragon. It's how we slay it. When our characters go out and they do what we only dream about doing, we have to decide we're going to do it. And a few people have actually put the two and two together. And the Watcher of the Damned, Watcher, the main character, who is actually, his name is Saul Azarian, but he's only known as the Watcher because that is his prisoner name. He's a writer. He writes to keep himself sane while he's chained to this gate. He writes all these stories and everything. And he frequently writes poetry throughout the story while he's, riding on a horse, or he's, working, trying to, dig his way through something. He'll make a rhythm and he'll write a story or a poem or something while he's working. He's a writer, and his traumas are lived out through his own writings, and his deepest emotions are there. And when he meets Rose, well, he doesn't even know if she's really even human. She looks like a little midget elf thing. She's a woman, but she's little. and he's trying to figure her out, and she reads his book. She actually steals it from him and reads it and gives it back and tells him that she really liked that and she's going to have to leave him now because she's just doesn't intend on staying in his world with this giant ape creature, but she was glad she got to read his book. He says he's not going to lose his only reader. He literally decides he's going to get Rose just because that's his reader. That's the first person who ever cared about what he wrote, that actually ever gave a dang about anything he did on those papers. To everybody else, he's a stupid prisoner. He's not able to speak. They think he hasn't got a brain cell to rub together. In his writings are all everything that he never could express. And when Rose reads it, he feels such an incredible passion, not just for her as a woman, but the fact that she's his reader. There's a bond there that takes place because she's seen into his soul. And I realized that I was actually writing that out because I'm writing about what it was like to be me as who I am. And to see the watcher do that, where he faces that demon of being afraid of being abandoned by your reader, having the only people that really care about you walk away from your story or walk away from you. And there's two things we have to understand. As an author, you are not just an author. You are a human being. If you write a terrible story, if somebody doesn't like it, it is not the end of you. You are more than just the author. But as authors, it is part of who we are. And in order for us to be that, to be the expressive part of our own humanity, we have to slay the demons that would stop us from rescuing ourselves. We are the princess in our own tower. We are locked in there by our own fears, by our own traumas, by our own realistic realities. If you don't have money, it's really hard to publish your book. If you don't have a way of getting something put out there, if you don't know what to do first, it can feel like you're trapped in this tower. We have to rescue us. Be that character that you're writing. Look at who it is out there and look at the very best part of them. You don't have to be the villain. Don't go out there and do that. That's a bad choice usually. But if you find your hero is rescuing someone, look at that person they're rescuing. Chances are very good you are seeing a part of your soul in that person. You need to do that in your real life. You're going to have to fight that dragon. You're going to have to slay that demon. You're going to have to go up against that army that is threatening you. You're going to have to go up against the oppressive government that is pushing you down. Whatever it is that you are writing about in that story, there is somewhere in your life a real analog to it. Those challenges are our dragons. You have to fight them if you're going to get your story out. And your characters are there to help show you the way. Listen to them. Write the story. Write it as you need to write it. Don't change it for anybody else. Write it as it's meant to be written, the way only you can write it. And then listen to what they do and learn how to slay your own dragon.
Well, that's definitely a good minor speech there for encouragement. That's for sure. But I do have one question for both of you that I kind of had at the beginning of this. It was the question kind of sparked this topic. That is, where you are now as writers, did you expect yourself to get this far? And what was your overall goal as a writer, Black Knight?
Well, I hoped I would reach this how should I put it, this milestone. Yeah, I did hope that I would, which is where I am, and that is quite close, near to maybe a few years apart, until I have completed the Starshatter series. Only, how should I put it? Let's say 2.5 books left. And there is another milestone which I am quite happy to have achieved, which is the specific area of poetic leveling up that I have managed to do in 2024 and the beginning of this year, with some of the short haiku, and also long form poems which I have to admit I sucked bad composing those back in the day, and it took me months to write one single poem. And there was one which took me 6 months and a half. But these days I'm able to somehow I'm able to do it in a day or two, which I'm quite happy of. And it's due to the help of others who read my old works and helped me and gave me advice, and also due to me not stopping, and I kept writing, I kept working, and little by little I got here, which I wouldn't have unless friends like Moral Officer Gran, for example, had helped me along the way and kept helping me, and many others. This is basically how many of us will reach a certain point, will level up, will get better. And mostly that is a combination between the belief of others in them and help of others. Either it's with critique, feedback, which is greatly important, or by continuous patronage. Let's face it, us indies, often we are not in a very good place. We have our day jobs, we have all of the different chores that we have to do just to make ends meet, and then on top of that, it is our stories which we try to make them come to life. It's not just for our sake, but for the sake of our readers, because how I myself learned early on, really early on, is that quite a lot of what you create, it is soon given, how should I put it? It's given an aura of hope, and it does help other people. It may not reach millions, but it doesn't have to. It needs to reach those that it reaches, which is inevitable and will happen. It doesn't matter how small an audience you assume in the beginning of your journey, of your author's journey that you have. It's this audience is important. Please do not go into the trap of the delusional astroturfed Hollywood persons who think that they are more important than their audience. That the audience is just like, they don't understand, they don't deserve them because they are also genius and also great. No. You're not greater than your audience. You exist because of your audience. And your audience, in many cases, is made better and wholesome because of you. So, yeah.
Definitely, that's something we see a lot today, where it's almost like these bigwig creators are resentful of the audience they've cultivated, instead of just being thankful that there's an audience to cultivate and an audience who actually wants to go out there and see their stuff. It's almost like they rely so heavily on their marketing department. They think that's the reason everybody shows up, is because of good marketing. But with that said, RH Snow, what about you?
Okay, reset me up again because I got wrapped around the axle on his on his talking about the marketing. Go ahead, reset me up.
Okay, I believe it was any obstacles you didn't see at the start of your journey.
Honestly, it's just life intruding. You think, okay, I've got because I did see, for instance, when you were talking about, we talked about how I would get this far. I think we also talked about that. Did I ever see
Oh
myself?
no,
getting
my
this far?
bad, my bad. It
No,
wasn't the that
we
was
did.
the previous question.
Yeah, that
I
was
think
pretty.
we had that.
Yeah, so we're
It was
back.
yes, the question was did you see or where you are now in your writer's journey? Is this kind of where you wanted to be, and where did you want to go next?
Okay, I'm so glad that I don't have dementia because I was like saying, okay, I think I'm on that one. It's a good job, good job. I'm sorry, I am on the right question. Um, with me being already 9 books in, I don't think I really didn't wonder if I could do it. I didn't, because it's a discovery type of story. I knew I was going to have a lot of books, and by the time I got finished with the first series, which was all episodic in nature, I wrote it just bam, 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 one right after the other, in like, I think it was almost 63 episodes or something like that. And it ends up being a book, 6 books actually. And so that actually made the flow seem easier as I got into the next series, because the next series is a lot harder because there's factions and there's all the characters and everything else. And we're continuing the storyline. I think that was more daunting for me. And so when I stepped back, as I was realizing I was going to publish this as a series and that it would have 2 more series actually on top of it. It would have, I have Watcher, and then I have Wanderer, and then Warlord as the third and final series, because it does have a definitive end. Um, I think that I was more concerned that I wouldn't get it done, that something would happen to me, that I would physically, something would happen, that I might get too sick to do it, or that life might intrude so much that I couldn't, that I could have a stroke or something else would happen. And so I was concerned about it enough. I consider this a quest. Like, I have to do it. It's not a question of do I want to do it. It's not a question of do I think I can. I have to. There's a Gaius on top of this. I cannot not do it. I have to complete this quest. And so I made sure that as I went into my personal life, that I told my family, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is how I want to accomplish it. I'm blessed that I have that support and that love from my family, that they understand. Like, for instance, my son, actually, one of the reasons I got distracted, my son came in just a minute ago to tell me he's on his way up to do our actually ham radio classes. And so I was doing that, and he, not quietly, he knows I'm on the air. They are so incredibly good to me about this. And that's a huge plus. But even if I'd been in a place where I didn't have that, I would still feel like I was under a quest to get this done. And so I've made sure to go through and having looked at reality, I don't let it bother me so much as it lets me motivate me. I know that there are challenges that could lie ahead, that there's things getting to this point. It required me to do so many things that if I look back on it, I think, wow, I actually did that. I actually managed to get that done, and I get really excited. But if I focus on that too much, I'll get wrapped, around the part where I had to do all those things to get there, and I don't want to do that. So instead, I look forward to really just every morning when I wake up. First thing I do is I pray that I'm going to get this series finished, and that it's going to be good, that it's going to serve the purpose that it was meant to serve, that it is the story that I was given, and that will stay true to that story. And then I try to make sure that if there is something in my life that is keeping me from accomplishing that I address it. I don't just ignore it. I don't just keep on writing, because it's easy to do that. But I need to go ahead and actually be able to move forward to the part where I actually am able to finish the book by getting someone to write it for me if I have to. If I got too sick to write, if I was able, maybe if I had a stroke or something and I wasn't able to write, because we see that with people, they'll have something, an accident or something will happen and they're not able to write. As long as I'm able to speak or I'm able to share something, having somebody else transcribe it for me. I've already asked somebody, if this thing happened, could you help me? And it would be incredibly important to address the issues that might happen for you. If you're younger and you might have a family, you're thinking, what if I have another baby? Do I have enough time to write? What if I have, then you say, okay, I have to set up a time for myself. I have to make this a part of my life. You don't give it up just because life happens. Some of the greatest authors face physical challenges. They face blindness, deafness, old age, disease, infirmity. They still manage to write. They still manage to get it done. And they left behind a lasting legacy. So we know that as we're dealing with our own lives, we're dealing with something that every other author's had to deal with, whether it's family or poverty or just time, pressures from our own obligations in life. Work around them. Don't ignore it, and don't let it stop you from writing. Instead, incorporate it into your schedule. Find a way to work around it. You'll find that if you deal with the situation, your worry about whether or not you can do it will start to disappear. Yes, I still wake up and I wonder how can I really do this? Am I really going to be able to get all this done? But I know that I've dealt with the most extreme situations. I've already set up a contingency plan in the event that something happened to me and I wasn't able to finish. I've already got my arc written out, and it's detailed as much as it possibly can be. And I've made character sketches. I've done all these illustrations actually were to let people know what the characters look like, so somebody wouldn't come along and just make up something like they do for some of the things. Because I have big dreams for Watcher of the Damned. I actually believe those things are going to happen. I believe that it could be that somebody would go out there and decide they wanted to make a show about it, or a graphic novel. And so I want those things, and I hope that I'm the one to be able to do it. But I did these things with an idea that it would be left, that if I, for some reason, shuffled off this mortal coil, it will be done. And if I can deal with looking mortality in the face, I know that you all out there, and everybody in this room, and everyone that's listening in the future, can deal with whatever challenges it is that are facing you. You can do this. It is not impossible. It can be hard, but that just means you are worthy of the challenge. If it is given to you, you can face it. There's nothing life can throw at you that you cannot somehow overcome or master. And mastery is actually the hardest one. It's a lot easier to overcome, to throw down, and to walk away from a fight than it is to stay in it and be wrestling with it every day of your life. That's mastery. When we deal with it over and over again, when we deal the same things over and over again, whether it's a parent having dementia or illness, or bill collectors knocking on the door, that's mastery. You are mastering it every day. You may not be able to overcome it completely. You may not be able to throw it down and walk away from it, but you can stay in the fight, and you will be stronger. You will be more disciplined. You will become the person you are meant to be through that challenge.
Powerful as always. We are headed towards the end of our current stream. We want to respect everyone's time. So, Black Knight, any last thoughts you want to share? And where can people find you? What may you be working on?
Well, I pretty much said most of what I thought, and I will my message would be, if you love what you've imagined, what you've created in your mind, don't be afraid to write it down. Draw it if you're an artist. Compose it if you're a musician. And even if it's perhaps not the bestest thing ever, or you have haters, let's say, detractors, this is not a reason to stop. This is actually a reason to try harder, to do what you love more, to create more, and eventually all those who earlier Snow mentioned they love to argue for the sake of arguing, love to critique for the sake of critique. They're not there to offer you normal, worthwhile feedback. They're just there to hear the sound of their own voice. You just leave them behind. They're not important. What's important is the act of creation and the people whom you are creating this piece of art for. And just as they say that if you build it, they will come. Yeah, if you write it, people who eventually fall in love with what you write or what you drew, what you composed, they will find you. But if you don't create it, if you just despair and say, oh no, I'm never going to be good enough, and you don't create it, well, the people who would eventually fall in love in this creation of yours, they will never find you because you would have never created it. Yeah, so this is what this is the last bit I wanted to say as to where you can find me. You can find me on Substack. That's the Black Knight Substack.com. You can read all of my current newest stories and short poems, haiku, and serialized Vault Your Adventure stories. And you can find my books on Amazon, all over 12 of them, 7 of the Starshatter series, and 2 short story collections, anthologies, Mandate of Sword and Railgun, and the second one is Blood of Tyrants. My 2 short column-esque novellas about Vailian the Volturian, you can also find on Amazon, and my new 100% old school fantasy novella, Lord of Bones.
Excellent. How about you, R.H. Snow? Final thoughts, and where can we find you?
Well, first of all, you can find me going out of my mind. Right in the middle of me talking last time, somebody came up to the door and knocked on it, and I had to talk to them while I was talking to you. Actually, I had to do it through hand signs while speaking on here, so that was awesome. So if I sound confused, it's because I was actually talking to somebody else through hand signals while speaking to you here on the podcast. And you can find me at watcherthedam.com, where I have all my books, and the Amazon links are there. And you can also find me at flow.page/RHSnow for all my socials and my YouTube channel and my Substack, which I share Substack, of course, with the amazing Black Knight. I'm just a little old author over there. You can find me on there, though, if you look for me. And I just wanted to say that, yes, life can be awfully tough, and it's also an adventure. You are an author. You were meant to do this. You are absolutely the person you were supposed to be, writing. Never question. If you're writing, you're an author. how far you go and how good you get, that's up to you. But you have to do it. And I want to encourage each of you to try. And I know you might be in a place where you feel like you can't do it. Let me tell you something right now. Was made strong through my weakness, thanks to the grace of God. I would not be writing this story today had I not gotten sick, had I not found out that I had an incurable rare disease, which might have actually made a lot of people very unhappy. Thanks to the fact that I had fibromuscular dysplasia and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I ended up not being able to be a firefighter the way I was, and I ended up not being able to be an EMT anymore. And instead, I became me, an author. I wrote the story I was meant to tell. And when you are put in that position, God's strength will make you even stronger than you've ever been before. Do what you were called to do. Get out there, write your story, put it out there, and never let anything stop you. Because if I can do it, you can do it too.
Well said. Well said. Thanks you everybody for joining us. I think that's perfect punctuation to end it on. I'm James Esparza, your lovely sandwich host. You can catch us here next Tuesday, same bad day, same bad time, where we're going to go live and discuss another magnificent topic. But with that, go ahead, leave a comment, leave a like, but we are out of here, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everybody.